random video intro. So of course, yeah, in my previous video, I kind of did forget to really talk about what consoles that some people could collect for. Now, of course, game collecting, it's a fun hobby. So it's having 10 copies of Skyrim. But game collecting is actually, on your hand is actually legal. Don't ask me how I know. Okay, so jokes aside, yeah, a lot of people could collect for all kinds of consoles. They might collect simply for the Xbox. They might collect for the PlayStation. They could collect for the Nintendo systems. They could just collect Sega games. They could just collect Nintendo exclusives or Pokemon or whatever floats the boat. No matter how you collect games, it's a valid hobby. That of course brings me to today's topic. What games do I collect? What consoles do I collect for? So I'd say it's a pretty fair question to ask. I collect for a bunch of consoles. So, do be warned, I am probably gonna blow some people's minds with how much free time I've had. I collect for every PlayStation after PS3, the Xbox 360, Series X, Wii U, Switch, Switch 2, DS, 3DS, Game Boy SP, and of course, I think that's kind of it. Now, consoles I used to collect for were, of course, the Xbox One, I guess technically the PS2, and of course, I guess kind of the PS1. And so, of course, that does bring me to today's topic. I guess why do I collect on these consoles? Are they fun? Is it worth it? Yes and no. It's worth it because, well, I'll get into that later. But I guess the first console I started really collecting on was, of course, the DS. I think it was worth collecting on because this is what really kind of did get me into gaming. I did have a PS2 and I did have access to PC growing up. So there was quite a few consoles that I could. So there were quite a few games that I was able to play on the PS2 and PC, but it wasn't really until the DS that I could properly actually experience quite a few other games. Obviously, most of these were Pokemon, but there were some games here and there I started collecting for. They always mainly start out with games I was interested in, and essentially stayed with games that I was interested in. Obviously, there were other consoles that I got some point afterwards, like, I eventually would pick up the Xbox and I picked up the 360 in 2018, and this actually started getting me into some more game collecting, and was actually how I even found some games I play today. This is the first console I completed Grand Theft Auto 5 on. This is the console I fell in love with Skyrim on. This is where I got a bunch of Call of Duties on, and how I found stuff like Fable. Eventually, I also start collecting for the PlayStation 4 and, of course, the Switch. And, of course, game collecting definitely can present challenges at times. It's fun, but it can be challenging. It's fun because it's generally an interesting hobby to have, and I really do like it. It's a fun hobby, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, it also is a bit tedious at times. And that's of course due to the fact that, well, it gets expensive. Depending on the console you collect for though. Retro consoles, for the most part, I think are generally going to be a bit easier. I'd actually say if you're gonna collect on consoles, I'd say stick with the 360 and PS3. Even the Xbox One. I found these three consoles to actually be able to be really easy to collect for. The Wii U itself can be easy to find stuff on, but it really does depend on the game. But I feel like stuff like the PS4, PS5, Switch, and of course the Series X usually are a bit more of a hassle to collect for. Same thing with Wii and DS, because a lot of these games generally do get up in price. This isn't me telling people that they shouldn't collect on these consoles. No, I would just say if you're getting into game collecting, I would just stick with the consoles that are easier to find games on. But it really does fall down to your interest, to be honest. If you're looking for a lot of JRPGs, or RPGs in general, you might have a better time on PlayStation and Nintendo, because those games usually seem to be on those consoles a lot of the time. But an Xbox does have some really good RPGs and JRPGs, but PlayStation and Switch also have some games that are exclusive to both of them. And so it really does depend on what kind of games you're into. But I guess the question is game collecting worth it? Can it be fun? I'd say so. It definitely can be very fun. There's been a lot of games that I found on consoles that have been worth the find. I mean, I found quite a few steelbooks for various consoles. I've even found steelbooks that I had no idea even existed, like a Call of Duty Ghost steelbook, which was actually pretty cool, to be honest. I've also found stuff like Advanced Warfare's steelbook. So game collecting can be interesting, but I guess it really does depend on how you really go through with it. Either way, it's completely wrong. I mean, if you only collect for Xbox, cool. If you only collect for PlayStation, cool. I'd say the only thing that really needs to be done is just have fun. Whether or not you play these games is, whether or not you play these games, depends on the person, but I'd say that valid. I guess the question could be, what's the easiest console to collect for? I guess it really could depend on where you live. Personally, I will definitely say I think I found Xbox One to be easier to collect for. There's a lot of Xbox One games that I've found, and I think I'm pretty happy with the collection I've been able to get so far. Although, it also really depends. I've also been happier collecting on PS4, because I found some stuff on that one that isn't on Xbox, and sometimes I've been lucky to find some stuff on Switch. I guess it really just depends on where you're looking at. And I guess it also depends on, I guess it also depends on, like, what kinds of games you want to collect. Because with me, I'm fine with collecting any game that I find interesting. If the game interests me, cool, I might pick it up. But some people, they might only want to pick up stuff that might be Halo or Call of Duty or another first-person shooter. While others, they might only want to pick up sports games. Yeah. So I guess yeah. So game collecting is definitely a fun hobby, and honestly, I guess I don't know. As I said before, I guess it really just depends on the person. But I guess could there be more tips for game collecting? Considering that I've been one, I would definitely say avoid newer gen consoles unless they are heavily on sale. Because, well, new games they're kind of expensive, and that's one reason I don't really collect on stuff like the PS5 or Xbox Series. Because, like, a lot of my PS5 collection is cross-gen games or PS4 titles. While on the Xbox, honestly, I think most of my Xbox stuff is, like, Xbox One stuff. Or heavily on sale. If you're going to collect on these consoles, I would definitely wait for a sale. You know, especially if it's Nintendo stuff. I've even been recommended this before, because I've had there's a GameStop I frequent, and they've done Pro Week sometimes, where you could get one game if you buy 2 used ones. I mean, honestly, that's how I filled up my collection a bit. I actually recently took advantage of that to get some PlayStation 3 and Xbox One titles. And I definitely recommend people do the exact same thing, especially with Nintendo games, because Nintendo, those games usually never go on sale or stay nearly full priced, which kind of sucks. And I get that, because cartridges are a bit expensive to produce. And I guess it really does depend on I'm losing like my train of thought because I'm trying to have like conversations on like Discord. I'm like trying to record this, so yeah, losing my thought. But yeah, I lost my thought. But I don't know. I guess with game collecting, the advice I could have is definitely, try doing, like, you could definitely look at places like eBay, because I found a lot of games cheaper on eBay than I have at places like GameStop or other retro stores. Amazon, I'm not too trustworthy with. They have good games and do ship quite fast, but at the same time, Amazon also charges a lot for older titles. Even if it's like a title that is on other systems, like Call of Duty Black Ops 2, it's on Xbox 360 and PS3 and Wii U, but I've seen the Wii U copies go for quite a bit actually, and it's just like kind of shocking. And it's kind of the same things like old Nintendo stuff. That stuff definitely is kind of annoying to collect for, which isn't the reason why I collect much for Nintendo. But there's also some saving graces with Nintendo. There's a lot of good third-party games on Nintendo systems. So if you want to collect for Nintendo systems, you can find some really good stuff on that. And I also would say this would be the same with any console. If you want to collect for 360, you can find some good 360 stuff. So on and so on. I would also say, if it's a cross-gen game, get it on the console before. So like stuff like Resident Evil and Grand Theft Auto, certain of these games have cross-gen versions. Like Grand Theft Auto 5 can be played on the PlayStation 4 and 5. You literally get the PS5 version for free. So, like, instead of getting two copies, you literally can just find a copy of Grand Theft Auto on PS4, and then you have both copies. It's also like that with stuff like Resident Evil 4 on the PS4, Resident Evil 2 and 3, 7 and 8, same thing with the Xbox. Aside for 4, because that one came out on the Series X. And it's also kind of exact same thing with the Switch 2 at this point. But of course, you know, if you're collecting for like stuff on like PS4, on PS3 or like 360 or like older retro consoles, you don't really get that cross-gen stuff. But I know one piece of advice I would definitely say is definitely make sure that you get warranties for these, or at least check the discs. Because I've had issues where I've gotten discs from older consoles and, well, I can't exactly play them because sometimes the disc might be damaged. Which I actually found out today, actually. It's also the same thing with older consoles. You generally want to make sure that you're being careful when it comes to buying older consoles. You know, because some of this stuff generally can be kind of annoying. And of course, that's really all I can say, to be honest. Yeah, there's probably more advice I can give when it comes to searching for retro games and consoles, but I think I might have covered the basics. I've also kind of talked about which consoles I collect for. So I guess the question could be, why do I collect for these consoles? Well, I guess, the DS, I don't really collect for it aside from Pokemon, but I collected Pokemon games on it because it was Pokemon. With the Wii U, I collected for it because there were some games on it that went on the Switch where I wanted to play the Wii U versions. PS3, I simply wanted to trophy hunt. Xbox 360, that's always been it's always been one of my favorite consoles to play on. PS4, it was my main console for a bit. And other consoles were just because there were a few games on them I didn't like, but, you know, or something else. But of course, obviously, no matter what console you play on, you know, it really depends, you know, no judgment, but that's all I really have to say for today's video. So of course, thank you for watching, and have a wonderful night.